Welcome back to the Nejo Chuan podcast. Today we are looking at an article by a student of Wang Shujing's from Japan, Hidimine Jibiki, who began his training in Japanese martial arts and then sometime in the late 60s, early 70s, began training with Wang Shujing. So he tells his story of how he got into the training and then how the training in Chinese martial arts was very different than the training he had done in Japanese martial arts. So it's an interesting look at the sort of spread of Wang Shujing's martial arts to Japan. So I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves and be well.
Today we're going to continue talking about Chinese martial arts as taught in Taiwan, focusing on teacher of Xingyi Bagua and Tai Chi, Wang Shujing. And last time we were talking about his adventures in Japan and the big impact he had on Japanese martial arts. And so we're going to continue looking at this article by Jibiki Hidimine, a renowned Aikido sensei and also expert of Jodo, the stick fighting martial art of Japan. And it seems like the Jodo Federation were the ones who were sponsoring Wang Shujin Roche early on,
Hmm.
um, which is interesting. I don't know if he taught, I mean, I don't think he taught stick to them weapons or anything. It was mostly his Tai Chi, it looks like. But it was a difficult time to practice Budo. By the orders of the general headquarters of MacArthur's occupying forces, it was no longer possible to teach Budo in the schools, and many neighborhood dojo were also closed. I did karate before and after the war in Shotokan karate as taught by Funakoshi, and we didn't have a dojo to practice in, so we rented the police station's dojo. At that time, judo was popular and karate was still rare. When we trained, the police officers would come and watch us out of curiosity. You could say it was a time when there was a great curiosity about Budo. Compared to that time, it is quite different now. There was a lot of resistance to Wang Shujin Roshi coming to Japan. Anyways, that the cultural emissary introducing Chinese culture to Japan was a master of Chinese Bujitsu was certainly a novelty. That's because the introduction was through Budo rather than the usual mediums of ink brush paintings or pottery. That had a powerful impact. This was a time when there was an international image of Japanese people as having a deep familiarity with Budo. So I think this was a result of the Chinese idea of the Japanese national character. So basically, the idea of Wang Shujin Roshi coming to Japan, a true living national treasure of a Budoka, was going to become a reality. I could not imagine what kind of a Budo it was. But even so, when I saw the article saying that a master is coming, I thought, I want to meet him no matter what, in the enthusiasm of my youth. So yeah, he makes the point that this was a Chinese cultural emissary to the Japanese, and it was unique because it was through the means of Budo, not calligraphy or a normal Chinese fine arts.
Yep.
And that's consistent with what Wang Shujin's students have said in other articles, right?
Well, that's his, that sort of, martial artists kind of have that thing of, it doesn't matter who you are. If someone's good at martial arts, you kind of have to respect them for being good at martial arts.
Right.
Kind of the whole thing, right? It's a equalizer, like that when two guys go and, one on one and fight, everything else kind of goes out the window, right?
Pretty
Doesn't
much.
matter your social class or how much money you
Your
have.
lineage, who's higher up in the
Right.
lineage or whatever.
It's like now it's just you and me, and we see what happens, right? And so I think, if someone's a true martial artist like this guy, you kind of have to respect it no matter what, and then there's the thing of, if you really want it, you're like, I don't care who the guy is. Like, gimme, 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 like.
So he says, at the time, I always thought that there must be better self-defense techniques. I was constantly searching deeper for them. Self-defense techniques that did not involve weapons. It is easy to understand the advantage of holding a weapon, but I was searching for a Budo that would allow one to protect themselves with empty hands. That was the reason I first chose to practice karate. The speed of the striking and kicking and its rationality. I thought it was superior to other Budo. I spoke of this before, but I had a friend from work who had a tendency to fight when he drank. And when he became violent, I was unable to control him with karate. Because he was a friend, I wasn't able to use the strikes and kicks of karate, you see? From that time, my search for techniques that could control at such a time deepened, and I came to encounter jujitsu. I tried to fight with karate, but I lost without being able to understand why, and I was astonished. That was who I was when I started jujitsu. Jiu-jitsu is a Budo that makes an essential point of relaxation, but I was still a novice in the world of ki. So I could not yet give up my allegiance to the physical power that is normally used in karate, and I still had doubts as to whether or not it would be effective when jujitsu was actually paired against someone like a boxer. I always had in my mind that there must be something else, and it was at this time that I encountered the newspaper article. The words Chinese bujitsu had an incredible mystique, and nobody knew what Taiji Chuan was. So
Like,
there you go. He's a karate guy, but it feels like I can't use it on someone who's drunk because I'll hurt him. But then when I tried against jujitsu and grappling, they were able to beat me because, it got close in and I couldn't fight him. So he's just, and then he's wondering what they would do against a boxer.
right, saying that, but jujitsu doesn't really know
Right,
how to deal with someone who's just pounding,
right.
punching you and stuff.
Skilled, high,
So,
fast, but
so basically,
strong
it's
boxer.
that circle, right? That that
Right.
you're
The martial arts
supposed.
argument.
Well, I mean, I think the karate thing is right. You're supposed to be able to beat them with your punches and kicks,
Right.
right? But then if you can't, it's like, oh, the grappler wins. But then,
But what if the grappler gets beat by a superior
right,
striker?
and so then
And then it's,
it's just this
but
sort of.
then use,
But it's
MMA to beat him because he can't kick and can't
that's
grapple.
the Bruce would always make the spy versus spy, from
Hmm.
that magazine, right? That it is just this continuous back and forth.
Arms race.
Who's got better weapons until you finally run out, and that's who loses. It's kind
Right. And then the strikers come up with some new striking way, and then the wrestlers come up with another grappling move that counter it. And
right. And what I think, it feels like we say this ad nauseum, but this idea that what in Chinese internal martial arts are about is they're not about techniques, they're about principles, right? So
Mhm.
what makes it really a paradigm shift if you're coming from the karate jiu-jitsu world is that principle of softness that you have in jiu-jitsu becomes not a thing that's sort of on the side or underneath or sort of seldom talked about. It is the primary thing that you are now trying to do, right? Like every movement is, it's trying to be soft.
Right.
Everything else comes after that, right?
Right.
And
It's
that
not
kind of,
the principle comes first, technique comes second.
right. And
And
that's a,
that's the flip right there.
yeah, that's a real, as they say, mind fuck because you're just, everything is sort of geared towards that they do this, I do that, they do this, I do that kind of mindset. Because that's how you want it to work out, right? Like that's how, we like simple solutions to complex problems, right? You want it to be, oh, the reason for it is this, and then you're just done with it. Whatever the problem is, right? It's like really nice to have a simple solution, but it rarely, complex problems rarely have simple solutions, right? The more complexity you have in the situation, the more complex the solution has to be, right? So it tends to be that you have to kind of change the way you think about it in terms of, it's not a one and a two and a three, where you're just going through like
Right.
techniques. You have to think about, okay, well, how do I use the technique given, with any given technique to embody the principle, right? So
Right.
kind of backwards. And that,
So a principle of softness or springiness or whipping or any of these Chinese
right. I
terms that you
mean,
use
yeah,
for
yeah.
different types of power and principles, then every technique that you do uses that principle.
I mean, I was sort of explaining this or trying to explain this to someone the other day, and the idea of um, the thing that keeps both of these things continuous and smooth is essentially the ability to turn your waist and shift your weight, and
That's a good
that's
way of
sort
putting it. Yeah.
sort of like a tick tock of a spring going back and forth, right? That it's like sort of way you would turn back and forth to walk in Bagua is the same way you turn back and forth to do a movement in Tai Chi, but it's just the context or the container is different, right? For a lot of people coming from from like a Japanese martial art point of view, something like Xingyi kind of is an easier transition, right? Because it's still, you're doing a block and a punch and you know,
It looks similar to
yeah.
karate.
And
Yeah.
you can where you look at something like Tai Chi and it's like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. Like
Like
just absurd.
how is this long, dance looking thing kind of
Right.
a martial art, and you get someone like Wang Shujing who clearly, boom, and you're like, whoa, what is this?
Right. It's a
And that's why it's a rare thing even in the Tai Chi world to have somebody who can actually do Tai Chi as a martial art, and Wang Shujing was one of those at this time, one of the few people who was openly kind of going like, I'll beat your ass using Tai Chi.
yeah.
That was kind of a new thing.
Tai Chi's always been playing the background a little bit because that's just the type of martial art that it is. It's a
I mean, it was
softness base, so you tend not to go out in public.
I mean, he
It's
did,
just
I don't know exactly why he did, but he there were a lot of people like Don uh uh Don
Andre Egger,
Don
yeah.
Drager's probably the most famous.
Robert W. Smith.
But John Blooming, a lot of those guys who were all coming from Japanese martial arts, they all hooked up with Wang Shujing and were like, this
Right.
guy is the real deal.
Right. I mean,
And so it was like they understood on a cellular level on some way that this guy had something that was
this ain't no
this
bullshit.
went beyond just block punch throw kind of learning that there was something else going on, and they didn't give up the other stuff. That's the to me,
Hmm.
that's the real lesson in all that is,
Hmm.
especially with this guy too, that you don't have to give up the other stuff. You can keep that stuff too and just fold this into it, or you can give it up and do it this,
Sure.
but it is that piece of like the the cool part about a principle based thing is you can take that principle, put
Right.
it into anything.
Totally. That's yeah, that and that's why people find that affinity later in their career. So he says, nowadays Tai Chi trend's known all over the world, but in Japan at the time, nobody knew what it was. First of all, it was called Chuen. When you say Chuen in Japanese, no one knows what you're talking about. Karate doesn't use the word Chuen. The only expression it uses is Te. In other words, when someone say that person has good fighting moves, you say Te.
Hmm.
Karate was originally called Chinese hand, but and then he goes on about um, karate meaning the way of the foreign hand. It was only later that Gichin Funakoshi, who was my teacher, used similar sounding characters to create the name for a weaponless fighting art, karate. This was because Sensei was a educated person, formerly the principal of a junior high school. So they didn't have Tren, they had Te. So that's
Right.
why Tai Chi looked different.
Wasn't that why?
So that's
Isn't that
interesting.
why Kenichi Sawai called his uh
Tai Chi Ken.
Kaiki Ken? Because that's
Oh, Ken means
how you would
Tren. Yeah.
say Tai Chi Chuan in
Right.
Japanese, right?
Right. So it could, maybe Te would be the Japanese way of saying it, but Ken is the Chinese way of
Right. So he's
saying Chuan.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Um,
But that was later, I
I,
think. That was
yeah, yeah, that's down the road. And Kenichi Sawai isn't, he didn't learn from Wang Shujin. He's a
no.
classmate of Wang Shujin.
Yeah, he
So
learned
they're,
they had the same teacher. But he mentions Wang
right.
Shijing in his book.
Oh, does
Yeah,
he?
as one of like the
Fellow
fellow progenitors
masters out here
of
doing it.
Yichen or whatever.
Uh, this is at a time when I hadn't yet mastered Aikibudo, so I still had my habits from karate left. Can I counter that technique with the speed of karate's strikes and kicks? Can I receive the boxer's punches? It was always in my mind there must be some better trick somewhere. I thought there must be some more effective and logical method for when one is attacked by a large, strong person. Even when I was attacked suddenly in Han Sono Dojo, the techniques that emerged were still karate. I would receive with karate, and then just at the end, I would control them with locks and holds from jiu-jitsu. So yeah, he's combining the two, but they're not fluidly combining in the way that he's hoping there's like some master key to it,
Well, and it's that thing you always say about how it takes a lot of training to get over your first martial art, right? That, you
Right?
know, if you're conditioned to do one thing, that's what's going to come out when you're when you're scared essentially, or you're just on autopilot, right? And the whole thing is of the reprogramming that has to go into getting something new to happen when you get into that place. Is that's what training, the more you've wired it in to just go when they come at you, it's the harder it is to get to that place.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's that transformation of internal martial arts.
Again, that's why Xingyi is a little bit easier because at least at least your mentality is still, your mentality is still strike first, right? Like, so you're
Sure.
not, you know, again,
Or in my case, coming from Aikido, my mentality is never strike first,
right, right,
always
right.
wait and just be totally
Well, I
passive
mean, that
and get clobbered.
I remember early on, I think this was actually at a demo. Somebody asked Bruce, what's the difference when, says, basically said that looks like Aikido. And Bruce said, well, one of the big differences is in Aikido, they have to strike at you and then you try to grab them and throw them. Bagua, you strike them and then you throw them. Like,
And you grab
so
them and throw
you're
them.
the one hitting and you're the one throwing, right?
Right.
It's like, yeah.
Genius. What a
Yeah, you're
concept.
not doing, it's not a response to a hit. It is the hit
Right.
and, it's that kind of thing, which is,
That's the beauty of it.
well,
So next he says that also the people that were gathered around me were all people interested in Budo. It was all people who thought, if I can just do Budo, then I don't need money. We just hold down jobs on the side. We were just working because we had to in order to survive. After an enthusiastic practice at the dojo, we would go right out to drink, and then the Budo discussions would begin. It was so much fun. We wouldn't go home, no matter how late it got. My job was in Kisarazu, and I wouldn't be making able to come back to Tokyo until the next weekend, and I wanted to linger over every moment. Each time I went back to Kisazaru, I couldn't wait till I could get to Tokyo next. Each day after I finished my work, I'd spend all my time training hard by myself.
nice.
And I love this guy, man.
And then
Just
at
like
the,
do martial arts and get drunk all night. That's what we want to do.
yeah, and then at the very bottom, there's a picture of him doing that sort of signature Wang Shijing,
Ah, the
single
Wang
palm
Jin
change.
single palm. Yeah, lifting the
And
leg as you come back to the
yeah, yeah,
center.
yeah.
Jibiki Hidimine is an expert in was an expert in the Yawara, handheld Japanese, very small stick that you hold in your hand and put locks onto people. So the interview asked him, "What part of your motivation for learning Taiji Chuan and Joe was part of your motivation for learning Taiji Chuan to deepen your knowledge of Yawara?" Yes, that was part of it. That was still the period of my training in the fundamentals of Taiji Chuan, and since I hadn't yet gotten to the point of trying out techniques, my attention was still focused on the Yawara. Since my primary interest was Yawara, no matter who I got a hold of, I only talked about Yawara. If I were to put myself in the place of the other person, I suppose I would have been annoyed. But I just wanted to talk about it, and I couldn't stop talking about it.
Dude's hooked.
Yeah, it is. Aikido is also a Budo of Ki. Um, Aikido is a Budo in which we apply techniques on each other and train through collision. But Chanron, standing meditation, is different. Conversely, if I had not known Aiki, I would not have been able to understand the value of Chanron. I might not have been able to continue. So he's saying that like Aikido running at each other is one thing, but standing meditation, Zanzuan standing, he feels like there's maybe two opposites of the same coin, like total stillness versus total
Well, yeah, I
activity.
mean, and I think also the thing about or in Aikido, they talk about ki, but they don't really give you a really clear sense of how to get it. Where, Wang Shujing's like, how you get it? Stand, and he's like, straight up, like, you want that chi thing? This is how you get it. And I think for a lot of people, he was one of the first to really spell that out. Like, look, this word key that's at the end of all your shit, that comes from this. And you
Yeah,
know,
that's where you get the key to do this stuff.
he would show them how to get it. That's what Bruce said, about Hung Yishang versus Wang Shujing's
Mm,
training method. Essentially, that
sure.
Hung Yishang wouldn't, and I think most teachers wouldn't really spend the time to teach you how to get energy. They would show you how to use it if you had it, and they might tell you like this is what you need to do to get it, but they wouldn't start every class with 30 minutes of standing and force you to do it because that's not a really great
Way to retain students.
yeah, exactly. But a good
So,
weeding out process if that's what you want, if what you want to weed out is paying customers.
right, get rid of them. So he compares his Japanese martial arts to what he's doing with Tai Chi. He says, up until that point, whether it was Aikibudo or Jo, I had a senior student and I could see the technique, so it was easy to understand. If I was using a stick, I could imitate my senpai striking like this and responding like that and work up a good sweat. If it was Yawara, I could imitate the instructor, and when I applied the techniques, my partner would take Ukemi and fall down. And I would think that was great. It was easy to be satisfied. However, whatever Yawara technique that one applied to Wang Shijin Roshi, he would escape easily. There was just a world of difference in our abilities. I wasn't even equal to partnering with him. Every time that I thought I have him, he'd burst full with chi and I would fly away.
Sick. All right, I was just
So
grabbing.
even Wang Chujin, even he could you couldn't put the Yawara techniques, and those are fucking painful if someone puts that on you. But he'd break the technique by launching you away with chi and you'd fly away. He'd burst full with ki.
There it is.
That's the best part of this whole thing.
I mean, again, I mean, I think this is where if you're coming from that sort of any martial art where people talk about energy or flow or anything like that, there's sort of a mythical kind of, or mystical element to it. And it's
Totally.
always, I mean, even in Tai Chi, it's a bit overemphasized, I think, but it gets people kind of pumped up, like
So here's the final paragraph where he makes a good point. He says, "It's probably true that Roshi was already releasing his ki before we even touched. Certainly, there was such a difference in levels between us. When one reaches the zone that Roshi was in, one's entire body is surrounded by a thick barrier of ki, like a halo around a statue of the Buddha. When that happens, the very constitution of one's body changes, and nothing happens, even when a technique is correctly applied to you." And so that's kind of his final word on Wang Shijin. So he's
there's
just
that.
radiating power, you know?
Well, that's
That's the
one of those things about, that with Wang Xijing that across the board, everybody who talks about him, they all mention this dude just had mad amounts of juice, and from Robert Smith to Bruce to this guy, who didn't know. I mean, they may have met each other, but they didn't necessarily like each other. These guys were not, but they were not conspiring to be like, let's all say the same thing about Wang
no,
Jing.
fuck
It's
no.
just that was, the impression everybody got when they met Wang Shujing was, oh shit, this dude's got a lot of power and he knows how to use it. Like,
Right.
and it's
The
just kind
just
of
the I love that statue. Like imagine a Buddha statue where you get that weird just hum off of it like that. Like
right. I
you're
mean,
entering the zone and get swooped
it's just
up.
a fucking, yeah, just radiating juice the whole time.
That's legit, man.
It's great.
All right, well that was a fun read. Thanks
All
for
right, man. Yeah.
making it happen.
It's nice to get that different perspective,
That's definitely a classic.
Yeah. All right, man. Talk to you soon.
All right, good session. Talk to you later.
Yep. Hey, folks, hope you enjoyed the episode. Just a quick thank you to everybody for supporting us. It really helps us keep the podcast going. Check out the Patreon this week. We are beginning a little look at Chen Pan Ling, another one of the Taiwanese martial artists that come up a lot. This one focuses on Chen Pan Ling's relationship with Wang Shujing specifically and some of the lore about whether or not, who studied with who and what the connection between their two martial arts is. So check it out. Hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks for listening and be well.